Elizabeth has requested number 27. Right, and this is a good, I'm glad you picked 27 though, because we talked about this in my other class, but we haven't talked about it in this class. On your quiz, a lot of you guys on problems similar to 27, what you would do is you divide both sides by the sine of theta, and that's not what we do, right? Because if we do that, it's like we're dividing out a solution, okay? So what we're going to do is actually subtract both sides by the sine of theta. And that gives us the sine squared of theta minus sine of theta is equal to 0, okay? So at this point, what would we do from here? Factor out your sine of theta, right? That leaves you with sine of theta minus 1. Okay, and now what would we do? Very good, set them equal to 0. Sine of theta is equal to 0. Sine of theta minus 1 equals 0. Okay, and now? Good. And what does that give us? 0 degrees. Okay, so if we look, it gave you 0 degrees. Is that correct? So really what we're trying to find is where is our sine 0? Where is the second 0, right? Sine is second, so when is the second coordinate or your y-coordinate 0? And the answer, as we can see, is at 0 degrees. But if it's at 0 degrees, how many degrees is that also? 360, right? So theta is 0, theta can be 360, and what else? Can it be 90? No. Because, well, the sine can't be, the sine, okay. But for this one, are you okay right now? But at 180 degrees, our sine is 0 as well, isn't it? All right, and now we just want to solve the second equation for theta. And what is this equal to? 90? And we don't really need to redraw it again because we can look over here, but as you see, 90 degrees is going to be theta. When theta is 90, that's the only place where our sine is going to be equal to positive 1. Is that clear? Because over here, down here, this would be negative 1. Yes, ma'am. Hold on, can you hold that thought for just a moment, please? Are there any other questions about number 27? Please let me know now. Joseph, you good with this one? Okay. All right, go ahead, Mary Elizabeth.
On number 19, when you put an n and you get -45,
I think that was a mistake on the key. Yeah, I will fix that. Yes. I'm sorry? Number 21? No problem. The key, I make the key and then identify errors, and I changed it. So there was an error, and I changed it. So the answer to number 19 would be 315 degrees and 135. Okay, so on number 21, we would add 2 to both sides. And we get 4 cosine squared of theta is equal to 2. And then what would we do to both sides? Divide by 4. And that gives us the cosine of theta, cosine squared of theta equals 1/2. And then how do we get, what do we do next? Square root, very good. And that gives us the cosine of theta is equal to plus or minus the square root of 1/2. What is this equal to? Oh, sorry, that's the square root. I'm sorry, did you do the square root? I wrote that incorrect. What'd you get? 45? Okay, so if we came over here, and we remember that all students take calculus, 45 degrees, that's also our reference angle, right? So theta, we know theta is 45, but we want to know where else theta, the cosine is positive, because our cosine is the square root of 1/2, which is positive, and we know that in this fourth quadrant, the cosine is also positive. So theta would also be equal to 360 minus our reference angle, which is 315 degrees. 45 is one of our thetas, and it is also acts as the reference angle. I'm sorry? No, because nothing's negative here. Right. Well, not necessarily, because it could be negative, well, what I want you to understand is the reference angle is formed. Yeah. Okay. You're good? Are you sure? You can't ever have a negative reference angle. That is true. Okay. Any questions so far? All right, so now we need to all right, and what did you get for theta here? 135? Yes, sir. Okay. All right, could you give me just 1 second, please? And let's finish 21. You probably get a domain error for number 20. Did you make sure that you closed the parentheses before you press divided by 2? Okay, I'll be right there. So, what did we get here? 135, right? So 135 is here, because in this quadrant, the cosine is negative. In what other quadrant is the cosine negative? The second one it's negative, but also in the third quadrant, right? And we know that theta is just equal to 180 plus our reference angle, which is 45 degrees. So that's going to be 225 degrees. All right, 1 second. Okay, so now let's go over number 20. So number 20, we are going to subtract the square root of 3 from both sides. And that gives us 2 cosine of theta is equal to negative square roots of 3. And then we'll divide both sides by 2. So then we have cosine of theta is equal to negative square roots of 3 over 2. So theta is going to be equal to cosine inverse of negative square roots of 3 over 2. And that gave us 150 degrees. So when we graph our angle, we know that all students take calculus. 150 degrees is going to be about right here. Okay, and we see that our cosine is negative because there's a negative here. This is how we know whether it's positive or negative. And since this is negative, we need to find out what other quadrant other than the second quadrant, the cosine is negative. And what would that be? Third quadrant, okay? All right, so we know that our reference angle is how many degrees? Our reference angle is 30 degrees, okay? So our other theta in the third quadrant is just 180 degrees plus 30 degrees, which will give us 210 degrees. Are there any questions? All right, are there any other problems that you guys want to see on this page? All right. 23. On 23, we would subtract the square root of 3 from both sides. And that gives us the square root of 3 times sine of theta is equal to negative square root of 3, we divide both sides by the square root of 3, and we get sine of theta is equal to what? Negative 1. And that's just me solving an equation, right? Now, what do we need to do now? Right, very good. So theta is equal to the sine inverse of negative 1. And what did that give you guys? And that gave her negative 90, okay, which means we're rotating this way 90 degrees, okay? And Mary Elizabeth, on the key on 19, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking about this problem when I was doing number 19. So when we're here, what is this degree? 270. Okay, now are there going to be any other places when our sine is negative 1 other than 270 degrees? No. We know it's 1 at 90 degrees, but we want it to be negative 1, so there's only one time that's going to happen. Are there any questions here? All right, let's do, what about 25? Do you want to do one like that? Some of you guys struggled with problems like 25, and it wasn't the struggling necessarily finding theta, it was solving this, okay? So how would I solve this? How did I get tan of theta by itself? Okay, we can subtract the tan of theta from both sides. And what is 3 tan of theta minus the tan of theta? 2 tan of theta. Two tan of theta minus 1 is equal to 0. So then we would add 1 to both sides, and that gives us 2 tan of theta is equal to 1. And then we would divide both sides by 2, and we get the tan of theta is equal to 1/2. Is that what you guys got? So in your calculator, you can put in theta is equal to tan inverse of 1/2. And what did you guys get? 26.6 degrees, okay? All students take calculus. That's about right here. That is also going to be our reference angle, correct? Now, in what quadrant is our other angle going to be in? How do you know it's in the third quadrant? Because in the third quadrant, tangent is positive and this is positive. Do you see? So to find that, we would just add, since it's in the third quadrant, the reference angle to 180. And what would that give us for theta? .6 degrees. Okay, are there any other questions on this page? Do y'all remember how to do 29, 30, and 31 where you have to take the, on 29 you'd end up having to use the tangent, 30 you'd have to end up using the cosine, and 31 you'd have to end up using the sine? Do y'all remember that? All right, so any questions on 19 through 31? Okay, let's turn over. What about 32 through 40? Yeah. Okay, let's look at number 37. I want to look at 37. Okay, so 37 gives us B. It gives us angle B, side C, and side B. So when we look at this problem, we're thinking, what, law of sines, kind of? I'm thinking law of sines, but law of sines would work perfectly if it asked for angle C, right? But it doesn't ask for A. Do we still have enough information to find angle A? We can't use law of cosines here. I'm sorry? Yes.
Wait, you just said
Okay, listen. I said that we can't immediately use law of sines to find angle A. But we'd have to, if we found angle C, could we then find angle A? Okay? Does that make sense? Well, if we find angles, can we find angle C easily using law of sines? Yes. And if we know B and we know C, can we find A? If we know 2 of the 3 angles of a triangle, no, we don't have to do it twice, because once we know angle C, we already know B. Right. Okay. So we need to find C to help us find A. So this would be the sine of 52 divided by 15 is equal to the sine of C divided by C, 10. So then we cross multiply. Okay, and what did you guys get when you put this in your calculator? 31.7? And how do we use that to find angle A? Right, angle A is equal to 180 minus angle B, which is 52, minus angle C, which is 31.7. So angle A is equal to what? Any questions here? Is there another one y'all want to do?
Will you give us the tables so we can reach this word?
I'm not going to give you guys the tables. You'll have the tables on the other ones. But you are, I mean, you guys are really smart, and you can make a table easily, right? Okay, let's look at 36, okay? That's what I was thinking too. Anna. All right, on 36, it asks us to find angle A, right? But we can't immediately find angle A. What do we need to find before we can find angle A? Little b, right? And are we using the law of sines or the law of cosines? Cosines. Okay, well, we can't use the law of sines because we can only use the law of sines if we have an angle, a side, and a side opposite that, right? Or if we have 2 angles in any side. Does that make sense? Okay, since we don't have either, we're not meeting either one of those conditions here, it has to be law of sines. Law of cosines, thank you. That's exactly what I meant, I'm sorry. It has to be law of cosines. Is that clear? And since we're given angle B, that means that we know we have to solve for side B. So this is B squared is equal to A squared, which is 23 squared, plus 20 squared minus 2 times 23 times 20 times the cosine of 119 degrees. Okay, and at this point, you can just put all of this in your calculator. Here we go. Did you take the square root of that? Did you get something like 1,375? Okay, but that's a big number, and we think, what? That's a big number, and we think that we did something wrong, but we didn't, because we're going to take the square root of that, and we get that B is equal to 37.1. Is that correct? Okay, So now that we know B, can we find angle A? Yes. Okay, to find angle A, we have to use the formula that starts with an A, so that would be A squared, which is 23 squared, is equal to B squared.
Did you not use the law of sines now?
You could use the law of sines, and we've had this discussion before. There's just other rules that you have to take into account using the law of sines, and we haven't gone over that. I felt it was more difficult, and that's why I'm just teaching you to just go straight with the law of cosines. And we're looking for A, right? Okay, and remember, we can just put all of this in our calculator. So that's 23 squared. And we know we're going to have to subtract this 37.1 squared. So he's gone. And then we're going to have to subtract this 20 squared. So he's gone. All right, and then we're going to have to divide by all of this. So we're going to press divided by, open parentheses, -2 times 20 times 37.1. All right, so really what we're left with now, just so you know, is we are left with 0.84057 blah, 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 equals the cosine of A. And you remember, to find angle A, we just take the cosine inverse of that. So that's all right, and we can press second cosine, second answer, and that gave us 32.8 or 32.8 degrees. All right, are there any questions there? Questions? All right, any other questions on 32 through 40? Can I write up here while we're on these formulas, which remember the area, it's just 1/2 AB times the sine of C, or it could be area equals 1/2 BC times the sine of A, or area equals 1/2 AC times the sine of B. And that all three of these are the same. Pretty much, it's just side, side, sine of angle, side, side, sine of angle, or 1/2 side, side, sine of angle, 1/2 side, side, sine of angle, 1/2 side, side, sine of angle. Right. You just, well, I would write it down just in case you made a mistake plugging it in your calculator. If I saw that you wrote it down, I'm gonna give you credit for that. But if you just plug it in your calculator and make a mistake, I'm gonna, you know. Yes, I'll show you. This would be area is equal to 1/2 13 times 17 times the sine of 95. Yes. Yes. That's it. Any other questions here? Any questions on 32 through 40? Okay. What about 41 through 44? All of them? Okay. If we have time. So let me zoom out a little bit. Yesterday's Wednesday now. Okay, so I'm just going to start writing out the information we're given. This is 26, this is 29, angle A is 58, and if we end up having two triangles, the second triangle will also have the same information that we started with on the first triangle. All right, so now let's set up our law of sines. Sine of 58 degrees over 26 is equal to the sine of B over 29. So we're going to cross multiply here. And we end up with the sine of B is equal to 29 times the sine of 58 degrees divided by 26. Are there any questions so far? Do y'all need me to work that out, or do we get the cross multiplication and how I got that? Naomi, you know how I got that? Okay. So what did you guys get as the angle, measure of angle B? 70.1 degrees? 71.1, okay. So this is 71.1. Now, to determine the measure of angle B, what we would do is we would subtract 71.1 from 180, and what would we get? 108.9. So this would be 108.9. Now, to make sure that 108.9 is a possible angle, we need to make sure that there are some degrees left over for our third angle. And in order for us to do that, we would add our 58 and our 108.9. And what does that give us? 58 plus 108.9? Mm-hmm. 166.9. So is that less than 180? Yeah, so we have room for our other angle. And to determine how many degrees that angle is, we're just going to subtract this 166.9 from 180, and that gave us what? Did you say 13.1 degrees. So this angle is 13.1 degrees, okay? And we're going to do the same thing to find this angle. So what are the sum of these two? What's the measure of angle C in the first triangle? 50.9. Any questions? Okay, now we just have to use the law of sines to find C in both triangles. So we're going to set this up. Sine of 58 degrees over 26 is equal to the sine of 50.9 degrees over 26. I'm sorry, not 26, over C, because that's what we're looking for. Now we're going to cross multiply, and we get that C is equal to 26 times the sine of 50.9 degrees, and that's divided by the sine of 58 degrees. And what did you guys get for side C? I can't hear you, a little bit louder. 23.8. Okay, any questions here? Okay, let's talk about the reasonableness of our answer. In the second triangle, when we get side C, what would be an unreasonable answer for side C? Something that we knew we made a mistake. Anything above 26. Pretty much anything above 26, right? Because this angle is so small, right? And there is a relationship. The smallest side is across from the smallest angle, okay? Does that make sense? That's just a way for you to kind of check yourself to see if you made a mistake. So let's go ahead and use the law of sines over here. Sine of, let's cross multiply. So what did you guys get for C? 6.9? And that's reasonable, right? Questions here? All right, let's look at, or do you need to see that for a second, Seth? While you look at that, I'm just going to start writing down these angles on number 2. Okay. Is everybody else good? Okay. let me write above here, I'm just going to do a little note of the law of cosines in case some of you guys have forgotten it, and it's that the sine of A, and that's angle A, over the side opposite it, which is little a, is equal to the sine of big B, which means angle B, over the side opposite that, which is little b, and that's also equal to the sine of angle C divided by the side that's opposite that, which is little c. Okay, so now let's cross multiply these two. Okay, so what did you guys get for the angle A? Say it a little bit louder. 3.4. Let's see what I got. I did get 37.3. Anna, did you see what you did? Okay. Did you put in your calculator everything you see in green?
Yes.
Did you use the sine inverse?
No.
Okay. Because when we're looking for an angle, we find an inverse. But I like that when you got that, you knew that you made a mistake, right? Okay. That's what's important. Because you can go back and figure that out. So we got 37.3 degrees. Okay, so if this is 37.3 degrees, to determine if there's a second triangle, what do? Subtract it from 180, okay? And what did we get when we subtracted it from 180? 142.7? But what happens when we add these two angles together? It's over 180. It's greater than 180, so this is not a triangle. Do you guys see that? The first one still is yes. Because we wouldn't on the second one, we don't have enough degrees for a third triangle. But on this first one we do, and we're about to find that by angle C is equal to 180 minus angle A, which is 37.3 degrees, minus angle B, which is 45 degrees. So what is the measure of angle C? Could you speak a little bit louder? 97.7? Good. Okay, and then, lucky us, law of sines one more time, and then we will be done with this problem.
Is Trig gonna have to do all this?
Okay? 19.6, good. All right, guys, are there any questions on 41 or 42? Okay, let's do 43 quickly, and it will go by quickly. Hint, hint. But I'm going to still do the same thing I've been doing by just saying that's 35, 14, 6. Okay, so sine of 35 divided by 6 is equal to sine of B divided by... Did you need something? Do you need... All right, what happens when we plug all that in our calculator? We get what? An error, which means no triangle. No one triangle, no two triangles, okay? Do we need to do 44? Yes, sir. Okay, so let's say you do this and you get an error, but you want to make sure, okay? Plug just this, what the sign of b is equal to, in your calculator. It's gonna, if the sign of anything is greater than 1, it's not. There's not an angle that will make it greater than 1. Any questions there? All right, any other questions on... Would you like me to take out a blank piece of paper and write down all the formulas that you need to know for this test? Okay. And a lot of them I think you guys already know without realizing it. All right, let's start with the identities. Okay, and you know it doesn't matter whether the tan squared or the 1 goes first, right? Because tan squared plus of theta plus 1 is the same as 1 plus tan squared of theta, right? Okay. You want the paper I'm writing this on? I'm going to have to think about that one, Joseph. I'm trying to get through these. These are the little ones that we really already know. Oh. Okay, let's continue. What is after this? Area. I already did the area formula. Let me do it again. The area 1/2 AB sinus C. Okay. Okay, law of sines. And law of cosines. Whew. Okay, I think that's it. You need to remember this too. All students take calculus. This means that all of them are positive. In this second quadrant, only sine is positive, which means cosine, tangent, cosine and tangent are negative here. This is only tangent is positive, which means sine and cosine are negative. Only cosine makes sense. I'm going to say that again. Sine, cosine, tangent are positive. Sine is negative, but cosine and tangent, I'm sorry, sine is positive, but cosine and tangent are negative. Tangent is negative, but cosine and sine are positive. Cosine is negative, but tangent and sine, cosine is positive, but tangent and sine are negative, okay? Are y'all cool with that? No? Okay. You still have 2 full days to review, including the weekend. You can watch these videos. You can do the study guide 7 times. And you can definitely send me a message on Schoology if you guys have any